There. We are now recording. I'll edit this and I'll cut it later. Okay, could you state your name, please, and which country do you come from?
Okay, my name is Susanne Schröder and I'm from Germany.
Okay, I'll begin with the questions now. So, what's your perspective on waste management and how do you think it impacts the environment?
My opinion about the waste management, it is super important, very valuable, and of course, super important to save our environment. So I have the point of view that waste management is essential. It is life-saving and it's also environmental friendly. So for example, in my case, I think reducing waste and be cautious about waste, it is super essential to have a long lasting environment and also a healthier environment, a more ecological friendly surroundings. So I think it is super impactful and very important.
Okay, which aspects of your cultural identity can you relate to this issue?
From my cultural identity, I mean, I grew up in Germany. I was born and raised in Germany. And so it does take a lot of influence. For example, the surroundings where you come from. In my case, Germany, as you might know, is one of the most ecological countries that there is. And I think from very, very early on, we have taught or we have been taught to think about the environment, to be green, to support an ecological friendly system, to uh, to have a waste reduction, to reuse a lot of products, for example, and to just in general always think twice about the actions that you do. Like, for example, from very, very early on, going back to kindergarten, elementary school, we have been taught, for example, to be cautious, not to throw anything away, not to throw anything in the environment, or we have been taught, for example, if we do so, which consequences does it have? So for example, in our educational system, for example, we have classes that teaches us, for example, to have a waste management, to reduce waste, to be cautious, to be environmentally friendly, to be sustainable, for example. And but then also very hand-on, we had once or twice a week, for example, sessions where they said, okay, today we're gonna have hands-on learning. Okay, everybody, today is no classroom time. Today it's time to go to the rivers, to the city, to playgrounds, everywhere around. And our responsibility was to, for example, pick up all of the trash, which in our mind, for example, it was said, oh, wait a second, that's not right. That's not my trash. That's somebody else's trash. But as kids, we thought, oh, that is not right. So I'm not going to throw anything away so somebody else doesn't have to pick it up. Plus, then, second of all, we collected all of the trash, but then also we were shown, look how much waste it's being thrown away. And for example, which in our minds, especially as kids, we were like, whoa, all this mountain of trash. What happens with all of that? And then, for example, we have been taken to like dumpsters or trash sites where it was mountains, and we have been taught, for example, what happens with all of these things and how many years does it take to get away from such mountains of trash, which especially as young kids or children or teenagers, then it has been well established in our minds, we have to be green, we have to be ecological, because the consequences are going to be too high. So I think that is one part, like, for example, from very early on, have it like established to think green. And so, like, for example, and second of all, you live in a system where everybody is thinking green. where everybody is thinking, oh, you live sustainable, you live ecological friendly. And for example, it's like cautious decisions that you make. Okay, am I going to do this? And am I going to be somebody that is going to harm the environment? Or am I going to be somebody that is going to support the environment? And so I think like living in a culture and living in a system that supports living ecological friendly, it is a huge plus.
Okay, teacher. What do you think is the impact of waste related pollution in your personal life? How do you think like the mountains of trash we throw, sometimes we don't take consciousness on it because we think it does not affect us. How do you think it affects you?
I think it affects in a lot of ways. Like, for example, I think one of the things is, for example, a lot of the health issues that we see today. As you see, like, for example, maybe you don't see it in the environment, for example, all the trash. Like, for example, something very common over here in the city is like it rains and all of the drainages are full of waste because it all gathers and everybody complains, for example. Then we actually see it. But like, for example, when it's all spread it out, you don't really see it, like how much the quantity is of waste that is being thrown away. But I think personally, in a lot of like health issues that we face today, or a lot of like environmental issues that we see today, or like, for example, a lot of changes that we see in our environment, it is an impact because we are not cautious about our waste production, but then also what we do with the waste, and just throw it away. But I personally think that it has a huge impact and influence on my personal life, but then also on everybody's life.
Okay. The next question, well, it's more of a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Mexico, we have really poor waste management. The average person produces approximately 900 grams of waste a day, and most of it ends up in landfills where it's burned and it causes a lot of air and ground pollution. And sometimes it doesn't even make it to landfills. It's thrown on rivers or it's burned but in the streets. So yeah, it's pretty awful. I think that to me this represents that in Mexico, we don't have a culture that educates about the consequences of this. What does it represent to you? Like, what does this lack of waste management in Mexico represents to you? What does it say about us?
Um, what does it say about you? Okay. Um, Most of the times when I think about all the production of waste and things that are being thrown away, I personally think that it's a lack of education and it's a lack of support from the system also. Like, for example, it's not enough education, for example, to show the impact. It's not enough, for example, um, from the entire system to have a support behind it, for example, because if you have a proper education, if you have a system that supports to be environmentally friendly, you won't have such huge effects, but you would become a country that is more ecological friendly. But what does it say about you as people? I don't think that it's going to be what it says about you as people, because you're so established in one culture and in one system that maybe you don't know it different. And so, for example, if you don't know different, then what are you going to do? But for example, I also think that, like, for example, it's very separate. Like, for example, there are people that don't care and that don't mind and that doesn't think about it and think, okay, I only have 10 more years to live, or 20 more years to live, or 30 years to live. Who cares about the generations that follow, for example? example. And like and oftentimes you can see it there, like for example, it's not that much education, or also not that many possibilities to do something different. Plus the system also doesn't support, like for example, to think about green or to be environmentally friendly. But then, for example, I personally think that, for example, over the past like year or 2 years maybe,